SX workers at Reddit. Who was the grossest customer you've had? Had a guy who was high as a kite who wanted me to roleplay with him that I was his daughter and he was ARPing her. When it was over, he confided he'd done it before in real life. I had no idea whether he was still roleplaying or not. I went to my supervisor afterward and she said nothing we can do. Total anonymity. Quit and went to the police instead. Don't know what became of it. There's scat and other gross fetish stuff too. But that's the one that really haunts me. Ex-stripper. I lived and worked in a border town and we would always get so many American tourists. Our strip clubs are also full nudity. Well, one douchebag with a Texas accent wanted a refund because my PSSY wasn't wet enough and didn't leave a snail trail on his lap. He also demanded a refund because he tried to slip his DCK out mid-lap dance and I screamed for security. For the record, he tried to put his DCK in me mid-lap dance. I make fetish clips and I've had some odd ones. Probably the grossest are the crush people. They're usually pretty polite, at least I'll get a message asking if I like crushing things. I say nothing alive and they thank me and leave. Just makes my skin crawl to think of hurting an animal to satisfy a sexual urge. Although one time, and of course this could have been fake, I had someone who asked and I said no. They ended up confessing to being ashamed of it. And we chatted for a bit. I tried to help them out and suggested therapy to help them deal with the guilt and self-hate. I still think about them sometimes and honestly I hope the sad messages were part of a fetish I don't know about because I don't want anyone feeling that awful about themselves. When I was 19 my 78-year-old landlord offered me $50 to have sex with him. This was not in 1903. I got to the man's house and he wanted me to pour bleach on my titties. I literally just walked right out and never looked back. So there I am. Laundry sauce on my titties. I was a cam girl and it was a site where you take a private show and your client could turn on his webcam if he wants to. I had a guy lay down on his floor with his ass back propped up against the side of his bed so that he would be essentially upside down. He was probably just in Australia. Edit. Thanks for my first silver ever. Kind stranger. I had a guy that just wanted Mike to spit full globs of phlegm in his mouth while laid on his back with his mouth wide open. I'm rarely grossed out but I just can't deal with copious amounts of spit or phlegm. It took so much effort not to gag throw up just from seeing it slide past his tonsils. On the other end of the spectrum I had a guy who liked to just lay on the sofa while I sat on him and watched TV. Human furniture fetish is definitely my favorite type of booking. I have two different guys that I'll never forget. The first was one that wanted my feet to be filthy dirty and stinky if possible. Then I had to smash one foot in his face and get him off with the other foot. The other guy wouldn't let me turn on any lights at all and when I got undressed I touched him and found his one ball was the size of a pillow. It freaked me out so bad I told him I started my period and needed to leave pronto. There's many more but these two guys always stand out. Way back in the day when I was a stripper, I was giving a dance. The room was dark and I was giving a lap dance to a usual customer. The customers were allowed to touch as long as it wasn't any no-no zone. So I was sitting on his lap. No grinding. His hands to his side. And I randomly felt warm goo hit my back. I have no idea how I didn't notice anything sticking out or how he managed to get off with no physical touch. But I was mortified. I got up, demanded my pay, and quickly ran to the bathroom. Had to have the bouncer escort him out. Yes, not a sex work. The room was dark and full of terrors. I work at a sex store. We have a guy whose kink is cleaning. So he went to the arcades, glory holes and cinema and pulled all the used condoms out of the garbage can and ate the cum in them. We also have a dude that likes to lick doorknobs and another one who smells the used paper towels. Edit. Holy shit. I can't believe how much this blew up. Thank you all for the rewards. This is by far my most popular comment in all of social media history. Well, I think we have a winner. Someone get the lights on the way out. Good thread everyone. phone worker here. I had a guy. Wanted me to put bodily excretions, roleplay on him. I was so stumped. So I said, if you've been a bad boy I'll PSS on your face. If you've been a good boy I'll sh-tea in your mouth. Cue the minute-long groaning, grunting and screaming the guy did with what I could only assume was the filthiest, never-ending tsunami of spunk. Followed with a thank you mistress. I logged off for the day. And did other things. I have no problem with kinks or fetishes. But he acted like he won the lottery. Looks like mama raised a polite man. Was a stripper. The ones who tell you that you look like their daughter's friend act are pretty gross. Foot fetish dudes would come in at the end of the night and the sweatier your feet were the better. Most girls love them though because they give amazing foot rubs and pay you for it. Had a guy come in and lay on the floor and pay me to try to fart on his face. He was dressed like Carlton on Bourbon Street. Honestly, a lot of girls like ones like this too. They pay really well and you don't have to really do any work. Edit. Thanks for the silver. Dude offered me $500 to adopt a dog and have sex with it. I very firmly declined. Not really a sex worker, but I stripped for a bit in college. The amount of older guys saying things to me like tell me your real age or don't worry your little secret is safe with me while grinning terribly was always gross. I look young so that wasn't very pleasant. It got worse when they would try and blackmail me into actual sexual contact by saying they'd reveal my actual age. Fortunately I was 19 so could just tell them to go ahead and do it. It got worse when they would try and blackmail me into actual sexual contact by saying they'd reveal my actual age. Who would they reveal it to? Yes, officer. I had a minor strip for me. From being a stripper. This guy smelled gross. Paid for 5 minutes in a private room. Everything goes well. The typical no touching private parts thing. He didn't want to pay for more time. So I was putting my clothes back on and he just hugged me really tight. Then kneeled and tried to lick my PSSY. Not my story, but I heard it from a friend. You know how girls will spit on your DCK to lube it up before blowing you? There was this one customer who told his girl for the night that it was wasteful to spit on his DCK and requested that she spits in his mouth instead. For every time she spits in his mouth, he would give her $10. $10 to literally make his bed. I'm not a maid, but $10 is $10. Condom avoiders. Those who just plain reeked of BO. Cheesy feet. Dirty ass. Too many cigarettes and who were complete strangers to a toothbrush. People who were scabby and scaly with suspicious sores in places you definitely don't want to see. Leesons. The guy who loved people to fart on him and in his mouth wasn't too flash either. But you got a laugh out of it at least. Not really gross. But a guy told me to marry him about 10 different times. I work as a chat general, so basically he paid to talk to 10 girls. Talked to them about a day each and asked each of them for their hand in marriage. What a weird guy. I'm a part-time cam girl. One day a guy paid me $30 to watch him masturbate and barking while wearing his socks on his ears. Lasted less than a minute and it was very surprising. Edit. TKS for the silver. To clarify some point. I don't want to kink shame him. The guy was nice and polite. Just wanted to share. I didn't really watch him. I had like a YouTube video on the other half of my screen and I didn't had to do anything. Excuse my bad English. My wife's best friend is a very successful cam girl. She was pregnant and some dude was paying her thousands to watch her take her pregnancy supplements. She made an absolute fortune when she was pregnant. He would make baby sounds to her while she did it. He would check in on her and make sure that she was hydrated and well fed. He started gifting organic foods over Amazon. I personally saw her play Jenga with her clothes on and dudes were bidding for which piece to move. I couldn't believe my eyes. I still don't. Someone paid her thousands to have dinner one night. She hired security and he paid for the security to make sure he didn't touch her. It became a steady gig. Free food and thousands of dollars. She started doing the GFE thing for a while too. Edit. GFE is girlfriend experience. Been getting tons of messages for this. I've been a cam girl off and on for about 12 years. I've seen some wild tea, but one guy takes the cake. He gets on cam and he's wearing nothing but a big diaper. He's got 5 or 6 different dildos lined up with a bottle of lube. Behind him is about 48 by 11 inches prints of celebrities' faces laid out in a grid. First he wants me to choose different dildos for him too. You know. So we spend about 10 or 15 minutes doing different dildos up the butt. Of course he had to remove the diaper. But he's acting very innocent. Like he didn't plan any of this and is surprised it's all going down. Obviously he planned every single bit of this situation. Whenever he's ready to climax he goes in front of all the photos and wants me to choose one. I choose a random one, I can't even tell who it is. He blasts the face in the photo and then in a split second. Of course. Screen goes off. One of my fav stories of all time. Edit needed to add this guy was paying me about $2. Not a prostitute. But I was assisting with a customer who wanted to rub my vagina juices all over his gums because all of his teeth had been removed the year prior and had been replaced with metal plates in his gums. He said this all in the same breath. Sir. Dentists hate this one weird trick. I used to manage a strip club and I had a guy that would come in about once or twice a month for over a year without fail and pay roughly $2,000 to the girl who would put on his dead grandmother's nightie and dance for him for an hour. Nice dude. I'm not a sex worker. But I did run a bar opposite one of Edinburgh's infamous saunas. Sort of legal brothel the police turned a blind eye to. Anyway, the girls used to come into my bar once their shift was over for a well-earned drink, and so I got to know some of them pretty well. Inevitably conversation would turn to their clients' kinks. 2 spring to mind. Semicolon. The high court judge who came in to be spanked and be told he needed to be punished. Not that exciting. But the one I can never forget was the peanut butter man. He would come in the day before with a massive bag of peanuts for his favorite girl and book an appointment the next day where the girl would tea on him and he would smear it all over himself saying I'm the peanut butter man over and over. I could never get that image out of my mind. Semicolon. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This is my most upvoted comment ever. Thank you for the gold and silver. Never had these before either. Online SX worker here. But had a customer send me a script for a custom video where I pretend to be a 13-year-old girl. Call him daddy and talk about my day at school, what it's like being a young girl, etc. Cam General here. I've seen far too many guys during C2C session get shitty absolutely everywhere. Little shitty. That type of play is never on the menu and I end the shows immediately when it happens. It always starts with want to see me use a toy and it's like they've never researched how to clean there for proper play. The worst one was when I was on a site where you couldn't end the private show or else you wouldn't get paid a cent for it. He starts plowing away and it's just flying everywhere. I stop what I'm doing and try to hide how hard I'm gagging as he starts apologizing and crying. See my other comments for other stories. Once I had a client who passed screening and asked me to meet him at his cabin, which turned out to be mildewed and smell horrible. On top of not showering, which unfortunately happens more than you would think. I got his pants off and as I went to put a condom on him, nearly retching from the smell, I realized his precum was grey and a long rope of it had dropped to his knees. He almost definitely had either an STD or some kind of cancer and I excused myself to the bathroom and left. Also, if you are fat, clean your ducking folds. The stench emanating from the fupa area can be incredibly intense and you're going to wind up with a yeast infection on your DCK. Former cam girl. Had a private session for a client who wanted to watch me sh-tea with the camera angled at my anus. Now I don't kink shame. Especially when I was a broke college student, but LMAO. Tried to do it at first to stretch out my session. More time spent in private means more money, but nothing was coming out. Not a sex worker. But I worked the front desk at a hotel. And had a John attempt to scam a girl out of paying for whatever they did by claiming he couldn't find his wallet. They both came down to the front desk. I suggested perhaps his wallet was in the room he has booked for himself. And not the girl's room. It was clear he hadn't told her that part. And gave me the nicest death glare. Haha, duck you buddy. Pay your sex worker. There was this guy. A chauffeur for the rich and well off. He had a 1-inch penis. So couldn't really have sex. But he loved going down on girls, specifically really smelly and dirty girls. Ugh. One time he asked me if I could let another guy come in me so he could lick it out and begged to suck my period out. So grateful that life is behind me. I do specialty fetish work, so gross is a vague term for me. But one thing that pissed me off was a guy asked me to lactate my tits. Push needles into them and take a good stack of photos for $20. I was working for a new company and a man came in who requested to be referred to as the yeast of thought and mind. I wish I'd never booked him. My childhood friend's father, but thank ducking God he didn't recognize me. Decades ago I dated a woman who had briefly worked in the industry. She said her oddest client was an older gentleman who would ask her to stand in front of him and repeat the same phrase over and over while they were both naked. He'd start, "I'm Bobby." She'd reply, "No, I'm Bobby." She said he was very particular about the cadence. Like she always had to make it sound like she was really Bobby. And she was insulted that he would suggest he was Bobby. They would repeat that 3 times and after the 3rd time, she'd kick him in the balls as hard as she could with her bare foot. She said sometimes he'd stop after the 1st round, but other times he'd manage 3 or 4 repeats before he stopped. So she tells me this story and I'm like, so his name was Bobby? Nope. Jeremiah. I wouldn't kink shame anyone. The worst thing is when a guy smells gross or tries to haggle with me. Take a shower before we get naked please. Former dom here. This isn't gross. But it was shocking. I had a client, a visiting doctor. Very sweet, who was into hardcore CBT, like so hardcore. His preferred method of warming up for the real play was kicking him in the balls as hard as I could. Think soccer player trying to make a field goal from halfway down the field. He got undressed. Stood in front of me all smiles and ready to go. We started to play a couple of warm-up kicks. Then wham, I kicked him in the balls as hard as I could. He dropped to the ground smiling and laughing, TBH. So was I. That was great fun for me. So I went behind him to go for it while he was bent over. And the guy had an honest to God tail. His spine tailbone grew straight out about 3 inches. I have seen heard everything. Never broke my D persona once with any client. But that actually threw me for a loop. Well, a friend of mine said they had to use a gaming YouTuber voice during it. So that. Probably that. Edit. My ducking sides hurt. Thank you all for the amazing replies. Oh yeah baby. Smash that like button. The guy that refused to accept that condoms were required kept offering more and more money. It ain't about money. Man. If you want it raw within minutes of meeting someone, how on earth am I supposed to trust that it's safe? Pro tip. It's never, ever safe. You have to clean the jizz off the glass before it streaks. 1. There was a guy who wanted me to shitty on his chest. When I explained that it's not something I can do on call, he was happy if I just fingered his ass instead. He proceeded to shitty himself. 2. The guy whose body always smelled like under the toenails do if you haven't cleaned there for a while, even after a shower and a scrub he smelled like that. He was a regular too. 3. Guys who slobber too much saliva and the whole tongue in your ear. All over your face. Well, I'm no sex worker, I was actually a computer repairman, and this is actually a true story. An older lady tried to pay me with sex with her daughter. One of my highest upvoted posts, and people are not quite understanding the part where I said tried. No, I didn't have sex with a girl. This one is really dark. You have to wonder how many times that payment worked before. Did you call the authorities or something? Grown men that clearly never washed their foreskin. A client that I really liked once sharted on a white hotel bedspread. I almost cried. I had to wash the doona in that one spot and flip it and sandwich a towel on the bottom and a top sheet with a towel underneath. Not enough money in the world for that one. Edit. Wow. My most upvoted comment is about someone who paid me for sexting on a bed in front of my very eyes. I think I'm starting to hate SX. Reading all these comments making me go to Himalayas and to start a spiritual journey. I'm an exotic dancer. At the club I work at had shower shows. It is a big open shower with neon paint. The guys sit in the row chairs in front of it. My one regular always have me do a shower shows when he came in. Instead of me acting SI, I feed him dog treats while shaving my legs. When I called him a bad boy, he'd crawl underneath the chair acting like a bad dog. When I was a phone WH-ray, I'd have pedophiles call me and want me to pretend to be their 6-year-old daughter, niece, neighbor girl. Edit. I tried to do the first call thinking if I did they wouldn't hurt real kids. But as someone who grew up abused, I just couldn't get over my own rage and disgust. Not a sex worker, but men can't be serviced at any brothels or massage parlors in my town unless they shower beforehand. No shower. No interaction. This one guy took out a chocolate caramel candy. Asked me to stick it in my butt for a little bit. Take it out. He then proceeded to eat it. He then put cocaine on my finger and asked me to stick it up his butt, as a guy who's never done any recreational drug in my entire life. I didn't know that was a thing. He then pulled out wads of toilet paper that he had bunched up in his taint. I suppose? That's when the voice in my brain saying, "Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?" Kick him out went from screaming to yelling loud enough for me to say, "Okay dude. I think that's enough. You're gonna have to go." He got a little mad. I'm 5 feet 5, 170 pounds. He was about 6 feet 4, 310 pounds. I was scared but stood my ground and thankfully he left.